Okay, picture this. The year is 1826. You're standing in a city square, and you look up. But the sky, it isn't blue. It's not even stormy gray. According to the text we're covering today, the sky is just burning. A strange, intense orange hue.
Yeah.
And as you're watching that sky, you get this sinking feeling that the world isn't just changing, it's unraveling.
It's a really vivid, almost suffocating image to start with, isn't it? That orange sky. It sets the emotional tone for the whole narrative of Chasers of the Mongoose.
It really does.
It signals right away that this isn't a standard political shift or, a conventional war. This is described as something seismic, a fundamental shift in reality itself.
And that is the setting for the text we are unpacking today. Chasers of the Mongoose is a fascinating and honestly kind of haunting piece of writing. It explores a concept we've touched on before, this idea of a great reset, but it frames it in a way I hadn't seen.
Right.
This isn't about modern economics or anything like that. This is a historical, almost philosophical narrative about a lost civilization called Old Tartaria.
Exactly. And what makes this text stand out is it frames history not as a list of dates and battles, but as a conflict between memory and forced amnesia.
Yeah.
You have two very distinct groups. The Mongoose, who are these scrappy guardians of an ancient truth, and then you have the Chasers, who are basically the enforcers of forgetting.
And the stakes are just massive. We aren't just talking about who sits on a throne. The text describes this transition from a world of high-resonance technology and harmony to a world of industrial grinding, smoke, and, well, scarcity. So the mission for this deep dive is to figure out, how do you erase a history that is literally built into the architecture? How do you make people forget what they saw with their own eyes?
That's the central question. And the answer the text gives is pretty unsettling. It suggests it's not just about destroying buildings or burning books. It's about breaking the human spirit.
Okay, so let's start with what was actually lost, the world before. To really get the tragedy here, we have to understand what old Tartaria looked like, according to this source. Because it sounds like science fiction.
It does, but in the context of the story, it's presented as hard fact. The text describes Old Tartaria as a civilization of harmony and consciousness. And visually, it's stunning. We're not talking brick and mortar.
No.
We are talking about grand domes, soaring towers made of what the author calls crystalline light.
Crystalline light. That's such a specific phrase. It makes you think the buildings themselves were, I don't know, alive, or at least active, not just inert matter.
Precisely. They weren't just shelters, they were functional. The text mentions ancient energy grids and specifically star grids. The whole concept here is that these cities were designed as benevolent machines.
Okay.
They harness the sacred resonance of the earth.
Can we just pause on that word, resonance? It keeps popping up. High resonance technology, earth resonance. For anyone listening, what is the text actually implying here? How is that different from, say, electricity?
So, in the logic of this narrative, resonance is a natural ambient energy frequency. Think of it like a radio signal that's just everywhere, all the time.
Okay.
You don't need to dig for coal to get it. You don't burn oil. You just need the right architecture, those crystalline towers, to sort of catch the frequency. It's like sympathetic vibration.
Which implies abundance. If the energy is just floating around, you can't really sell it.
Exactly. If the energy comes from the Earth's natural hum and these star grids, it's limitless. It's free for everyone. There's no meter running on the side of your house.
Right.
And that dictates the entire philosophy of Old Tartaria. It was a civilization built on human potential, supported by this limitless energy. People weren't fighting over resources because the resources were everywhere.
Which makes the transition to the new grid so jarring. The text takes us to this city, Solanos, and the contrast is just brutal. One minute you have these singing crystalline towers, and the next you have what? Steam, iron, soot, grinding gears.
It's described as a sensory assault. The text talks about the air becoming heavy, soot coating your throat. The silence and the pleasant hum of the crystals are just replaced by the deafening noise of machinery. That's the new grid.
And who's behind this? This isn't a natural evolution of tech, right? It's not like someone just invented a steam engine and everyone thought, oh, this is better?
No, not at all. It's a top-down imposition. We're introduced to a group called the Council of Governors. They're the ones heralding the steam and iron as progress.
This is the part I found really difficult to wrap my head around. Why trade limitless clean energy for dirty, finite coal and steam? It just doesn't make logical sense. It seems like a downgrade.
It is a downgrade for the user, but it's an upgrade for the manager. The key insight the text offers is all about control. Abundance is very hard to police. If everyone has free energy from the atmosphere, the social hierarchy flattens. You can't charge people for air. But if energy requires coal, well, you can own the mine. If it requires steam, you can own the pipes.
Right. You can turn it off.
You can turn it off. As the text explicitly says, control demanded scarcity. The move to steam wasn't technological evolution. It was a leash, a deliberate strategy to make the population dependent on the governors.
Wow. That's a chilling thought. Progress is a trap. But to pull that off, that's a massive psychological operation. You have to get people to go along with it, to make them forget they used to have it better. And this brings us to the title, The Mongoose and the Chasers.
This is the social engineering piece, and frankly, I think this is the most terrifying part of the source material because it feels so grounded in human psychology. It's not about magic, it's about peer pressure.
So let's define these factions. Who are the Mongoose?
The Mongoose are described as the people who saw the cracks. They're the ones who just didn't buy the official story. They carried fragments of the truth. They remembered the energy grids. They remembered the towers used to sing.
And that name, Mongoose. It's interesting. A mongoose is a small creature, but it fights snakes. It's quick, resilient.
It implies a scrappy, survivalist nature. They're fighting a venomous lie. They're the underdogs. But then you have the chasers.
The Chasers. Now, when I first read that, I assumed the Chasers were like secret police or elite soldiers in black uniforms.
That would be the standard dystopian trope, wouldn't it? Something out of 1984. But the text gives us something much more insidious. The chasers weren't soldiers.
They were neighbors.
They were neighbors, friends, the bakers down the street.
That gave me chills. The text says they were paid handsomely by the governors, so regular people incentivized to turn on their own.
It's the weaponization of the peer group. The governors didn't just use physical force, they used psychological warfare. And the weapon of choice wasn't a gun, it was ridicule.
Ridicule. That's so specific. Why ridicule? If you're a totalitarian regime, why not just arrest everyone?
Because violence creates martyrs. If you shoot someone in the street for telling the truth, people might wonder what was so important that they had to die. It validates the secret.
No.
But if you laugh at them, if you make them look like a lunatic...
Then nobody wants to listen. You isolate them socially.
Exactly. You discredit the message by destroying the messenger's social standing. The text describes how chasers would point and jeer and brand anyone who spoke of Tartaria as a mongoose. And that word, mongoose, it became a slur. It meant you were crazy, backward.
There's that powerful line from the protagonist, Amara Elvanova. She says being called a mongoose used to be her badge of honor, but now it felt like a noose tightening around her neck.
That's the shift. The chasers successfully flipped the script. They took the badge of the truth teller and turned it into the mark of the village idiot. They didn't need to destroy the truth. They just needed to drown it in mockery.
Let's talk about the characters who live through this. Amara and Nikolai. They really embody this struggle.
They do. Amara represents the emotional toll. We meet her on a hill overlooking Solanos, watching the lights dim. She's watching her home literally lose its shine. She's the witness.
And Nikolai feels different. He seems a bit more hardened.
Nikolai's the cynic, the realist. He wears this tattered blue coat, which the text notes is a symbol of remembrance, and he carries this weathered tome of maps. He knows the physical evidence is disappearing, so he's trying to preserve the data. He's the archivist.
And there's a scene involving a character named Lyre that just perfectly illustrates how this chaser dynamic works. The incident in the square. I think we need to walk through that because it's brutal.
It is. So Lyre is a known mongoose. He's not being violent, he's just speaking. Standing in the square, talking about the star grid, he's telling people, remember when the towers sang to the stars?
And the response from the crowd isn't debate.
No, it's theater. A chaser, a burly man with a jagged scar, drags him out and just incites the crowd to laugh. He sneers at him. Tell us again, mongoose. Tell us how the sky hummed. He's performing, inviting them all to join the bullying.
It's just bullying, pure and simple.
Like
high school, but with life or death stakes.
it is, but it's strategic bullying. Lyre tries to defend himself. He yells, you laugh because you fear the truth. And that's the crux of it. Deep down, the chasers might know something is wrong. They can smell the soot. But the fear of being ostracized is stronger than the desire for truth.
And the crowd just roars with laughter. Lyre is taken away. And the text says this creates an atmosphere where the mask of progress, the steam and iron, is celebrated as liberation, even as it's actually enslavement.
That's the mask of progress. People cheering for their own chains because they've been convinced that the old freedom was a fairy tale for crazy people. It really shows how fragile memory is under social pressure.
So we have the psychological erasure. But the text also talks about the physical reset,
Mhm.
because you can't just laugh away a crystalline tower. You have to physically get rid of it.
Right. You can't have a 500-foot tower glowing in the background while telling everyone it never existed. And this brings us to the mechanics of the 1826 reset. The text makes a really important distinction here. The reset wasn't an instant event, it was a slow erasure.
Which honestly sounds more painful.
It is. It's a grinding process. The text mentions burning libraries, classic move. But then it mentions something very specific that connects to some real-world theories. Burying Tartarian ruins beneath layers of mud.
The mud, the whole mud flood idea. Here, it's presented as a deliberate method of concealment.
Yes. You just cover the past, you change the elevation of the ground level until the first floors of the old buildings become basements, and then, and this is crucial, you draw new maps.
That's the ultimate gaslighting, isn't it? You point to a map and say, that tower was never there. See, the map says it's empty land.
And if you control the schools and the printing presses, within one generation, the map becomes the truth. Facts about the old world get twisted into tales of madness. They become myths for crazy grandparents to tell.
But Amara and Nikolai, they don't just give up. They are resisting.
Hmm.
But they can't fight the governors head-on, right? They can't stop the steam engines with their bare hands.
No, that war is lost. So they go underground. Literally and figuratively. The text mentions them meeting in forgotten catacombs beneath the city.
They're poring over blueprints of the resonance tech, trying to save the how. And when Solanos becomes too dangerous, they flee to the mountains.
I love the detail about how they hid the knowledge. They didn't just bury books. They knew paper rots and books burn, so they encoded the knowledge into symbols.
Like petroglyphs.
Exactly, or patterns. If you carve a symbol into a rock face or weave it into a folk song or hide it in the geometric design of a rug, that persists. They hid truth where chasers wouldn't look because chasers only see the surface. The Mongoose hide things in the foundation.
There's a moment towards the end that I found really touching. They're in the ruins of a Tartarian tower. The crystalline spire is shattered. It's broken. But they touch the foundation.
And it still hums. It thrummed faintly. That is the heartbeat of the story. You can break the crystal, cover it in mud, mock the people who remember it. But the resonance is still there.
Nikolai says, they can bury the truth, but the earth remembers.
That's the key takeaway. The technology of old Tartaria wasn't artificial. It was symbiotic with the Earth. So to truly destroy it, you'd have to destroy the planet itself. The memory of that energy exists as long as the Earth is there. It's a very comforting thought in a dark story.
So let's look at how this all wraps up. The story ends, but it's not exactly a happy ending. The good guys don't storm the castle and turn the star grid back on.
No, it's a tragedy, but a tragedy with a seed of hope. By the end of the century, according to the text, the steam and iron world won. The governors prospered. Their grip was absolute. Tartaria became a forgotten myth.
So to the average person in 1900, Solanos was just a modern industrial city. They had no idea they were walking on top of a buried civilization.
None at all. The collective amnesia was successful. The chasers did their job. The ridicule worked. But the Mongoose were not wiped out. They were hunted, yes. But they survived in hidden vaults and forests. The text says the legacy endured.
The chasers won the battle, but the war for truth continues. That's the closing sentiment.
It suggests history is cyclical. The truth goes dormant, like a seed in winter. It waits for the mud to wash away. It waits for someone to look at a map and say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Why is this window half buried in the ground?
It really makes you look at the world differently. You start wondering, what are the things we laugh at today? What do we dismiss as crazy just because everyone else is laughing?
That's the uncomfortable mirror this story holds up. We all like to think we'd be the Mongoose. We'd be in the blue coats, holding the ancient maps, standing up to the mob. But statistically, most of us would be the chasers. Or at least we'd be the people in the crowd, staying silent while Wire gets dragged away, because we don't want to be next.
Oof. That hits home. It's about the courage to be the outlier.
And the courage to question the new grid, whatever the new grid happens to be in our time. Whenever we're told that a new technology or a new system is progress, and that the old ways were primitive, it's worth asking, is it really better? Or is it just more controllable?
Is it liberation? Or is it a leash?
Exactly. Control always demands scarcity. If you see scarcity being manufactured, you have to ask who's benefiting from that control.
Well, this has been a heavy one, but an incredibly fascinating journey into Chasers of the Mongoose. It's a story about 1826, but it feels like it's about right now.
History often does.
So here's our final thought for you to chew on. We talked about the symbols hidden in the mountains. We talked about the earth remembering. Look around your own city. Look at the architecture. Look at the foundations.
Ask yourself, are there new grids being built over old wisdom right now? And maybe more importantly, if you heard a truth that sounded crazy, would you listen to the mongoose or would you laugh with the chasers?
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll
Yeah.
catch you on the next one.